two visuals I've done over the years, especially when I'm briefing people on Capitol Hill and trying to get wayward Republicans on the straight and narrow. I've tried to come up with ways of sort of visually depicting things that will help them understand. The top visual points out that whether you finance government with debt, with taxes, or by printing money, in every single one of those cases, you are transferring resources from the productive sector of the economy to Washington. Those are all bad ways to finance government, but the fundamental problem is that government is very, very big. If government is consuming 37% of our GDP, when you look at federal, state, and local spending, that is a major problem. How they finance it, all three of those options are bad, but the real problem is the size of government. Now, most of the Washington debate tends to focus on red ink. That's what politicians are most likely to say is the problem. Well, I've sort of been caught in the middle for decades because, especially when I was younger, the Keynesians were in charge, and the Keynesians said deficits were wonderful. But the political establishment in Washington now says deficits are terrible. And I'm sort of in the middle saying, well, I don't like deficits, but deficits are the tail. The dog is the size of government. And so the bottom visual is designed to show that, don't really worry that much about red ink, or you worry about it, but always keep in mind what the real issue is. Let me put it this way. If I get really bad headaches and I wind up going to the doctor, and the doctor is like, does the CAT scans or MRIs and whatever, and says, Dan, you have a brain tumor. Do I then ask the doctor, well, can I have some Tylenol for my headache? Well, maybe I do, but guess what I'm far more worried about? I'm far more worried about the fact that there's a tumor in my head. The tumor is the problem, the headache is the symptom of the problem, and that is something that is very, very difficult for me to get Republicans to understand. I've joked, only half joking, that I'd love to put shock collars on all of them, and every time they said deficit and debt, I would shock them until they eventually learned to say government spending is the problem, but I failed miserably in this. So here is a couple of charts from the most recent Congressional Budget Office long-run forecast. Outlays by category on the left and government debt on the right, both as a share of GDP. One is the problem, one is the symptom of the problem. It's not good to have that rising line on the right side of the screen, but I'm more worried about the fact that we have a rising line on the left side of the screen. If you're on the left side of the screen and government's getting bigger and bigger, growing faster than the private sector, guess what? Whether they're taxing the money out of the private economy, borrowing out of the private economy, or whether we have fiscal dominance, meaning that the Fed is figuratively printing money to finance it, those are all bad options. We have to always remember, government spending is the problem.